It's so good to have you here with us in this show made in Brazil. It's a satisfaction to count on you anywhere in the world. We are in Expo Zebu and we are reaching you virtually, but we are also here in person. After 2 years, we are here once again with this full house, with breeders, with technicians, full of people, full of participants, everyone that is moved by the love to Zebu. And we are here again with you to bring you technical information that are really important for the pasture. This segment is really important because for us to produce with quality and efficiency, we have brought you a team of experts that are going to talk about this. I cannot forget to mention our partners, Apex Brazil, who is the agency that supports the Brazilian cattle project for 19 years, MAPA, the Foreign Affairs Ministry, Itamaraty, MAPA, ABCZ, and its studio that always receives us here, the board from ABCZ, where we always make our Made in Brazil shows, and all of our partners that take this to the world because it's through our partners that we get all of the genetics to the world, living animals, and anything that you need in a tropical country so that you can produce with quality and efficiency. And as I said before, today we have a very important topic that we work with a lot here in Brazil, which is regarding the quality of our pasture. Here in the studio with me, I have the partners Edson José Castro Jr., the technical coordinator of Wolf Seeds. Welcome. We have also Emerson Ferrari Neto from Barimbu in Brazil. Hello, how are you? Welcome. And I would like to also introduce and call our friends, researchers, and technicians that are here with us virtually participating in our program Made in Brazil. Hello. It's a great satisfaction to have you with us in our program. We're the agronomist engineers Flávio Salles in production of seeds in Jaboticabal, postgraduate in the management of seeds. So it's a satisfaction to have you with us here. Thank you very much. Also with us, Professor Janaína Martucelo, I think that is it. Professor of the University, the Federal University of São João del Rei. Welcome to, and thank you so much for accepting our invitation. I am very happy for the invitation, and I think that it's going to be a great conversation. I'm very happy. Let's move on. I'm sure because the expertise here is huge. So, André Tadal, agronomist engineers from the Department of Seeds of Matsuda. Hello, how are you?
It's my pleasure to be able to collaborate with such an important topic.
Exactly that. And our partner, Alfredo Osorio, director and Mercosul Papaloc, it's always good to have you here with us.
Good, it's a pleasure, especially with so many experts around here in this topic. And to talk about such an interesting topic, which is the quality of the seed and the pastures as well.
We thank you so much, and we are extremely happy to have you with us. And let's go because the topic today is really important and it makes all the difference when we are talking about productivity, especially in tropical areas of the world. We know and we understand that in Brazil, in a very tropical country where we improve our zebu herd, We wouldn't have the same results if we didn't have pasture with so much quality. Today, we take that to the entire world. Not only the technology of genetics that we work here in our country, but also the genetics and quality and technology of the seeds that are here worked as well and that can reach you anywhere in the world, aiding you in your process of production. So, guys, let's go. I would like to start speaking a little bit with Professor Flávio for us to understand a little bit more about quality of the seed in the establishment of a pasture. Flavio, could you direct us a little bit more about this topic? What are the items that are important? The producer that sometimes is in another country should be attentive to when he thinks about establishing a new pasture.
Well, initially, I'd like to inform the factors that influence the pastures. Differently from the species in agriculture, flagera today, in a very simple language for everyone to understand, we use the commercialized species that we export to the rest of Latin America, Africa, and some countries from the United Arab Emirates and these grasslands. What we have to understand what we are producing, what we are discussing here. Starting from the premise that these species are the same ones that were introduced 20, 25 years ago. They are species that were introduced and genetically they didn't have any genetic modification due to the genetically it's the same species that was introduced in the country, and we're talking about a material that only was perfected, was improved genetically. I'll give an example. The grass cultivated in the pastures is the same one that came from Africa. So, starting with this concept, it has characteristics that are intrinsic, that are connected to its reproduction. That is, it's a species that presents characteristics for maintenance of the species. It has dormants in its as a characteristic. Why? Because it is a defense of the plant that it does so that everything doesn't germinate at the same time, and then you cannot keep this species. So these grasses that are forages, they we have the first and the second, and after you can add numbness or dormancy, and it can be physiological, it can be different one. So genetically, we're talking about of seeds and species that were introduced, and we currently sell the same one. And starting from this point, another factor that is important is that we do not sell, and now we have the technical part. We commercialize, we sell productive units, we sell groups of seeds. Why is it important? It's actually the dry fruit that we commercialize. So this fruit, it matures in time, and if you get green fruit, it goes it, after some times with ethylene, it makes it mature. And the same happens with the grasses. You you reap the seed, and you get it to the storage, and after some time, the seed starts to mature, and then it has this dormancy. So that's one point. An important factor in terms of the quality also is connected to the purity. That we're going to discuss this here, and that's a factor that influences the definition And
Liability is a factor that is also a topic in quality assessment that is considered a physiological factor, and but it's a factor that many countries in Central America, many of them, and there are a few exceptions, but they don't take into account the base of analysis of physiological quality is the germination. So it's the seeds that have us that are healthy. And another factor that we don't value a lot here in Brazil, even though it's a very important area, it's concerning of the health of the seeds, and they are usually produced in these areas that plant soy, and where you can, in the system of mechanized harvest, you can take the presence of some weeds, that it's also likely that you will bring some seed and that will be a host of a few diseases that might you might introduce. So you remove the seed of unit of area, production area, you sell it to another region, and together with the seed might bring some diseases. Even though we have very serious criteria in terms of weeds, we don't have the sanitation enough. And in some countries, probably, there is a demand in terms of physiological quality and especially the phytosanitary quality. That's more or less an introduction for us to start discussing topic by topic, besides what I think it's very important, the origin of the seed. That is, as there are many species in the market, it's hard to identify what the phenotypical characteristic of that species or the type of species. Sometimes you plant one, there are many types of species, and it's hard to identify which one you're planting. And you might want to plant A, and in reality, you're planting the type B, the species B. So that is a problem to identify, and we have to try and find a solution. So it's important for that in the selling part to have the quality. There are many factors that will influence its quality, and to identify whether what kind of species being sold. So that's something that we might have to something for some food for thought for us to start thinking talking about.
Very good, Flavio. You could help us very much. You gave us a line of sequence, and that's why I would like to invite Professor Janaína for her to point to us from all of these items that were mentioned by Professor Flavio, the ones that she really believes that are very important technically for this development and the establishment of pasture and seeds of quality. Professor Flavio already introduced this topic really well. I think that it was really good, but it's important for us to highlight that there are some things in our cattle breeding and the quality of the seed that changes a lot in this process because we have a myth when it comes to the seeds that has a lot to do with the quality of the seeds, which is the myth of the first pasture that we should put let the seed be sown at the first pasture so that we can fill in the gaps. And that has a lot to do with the quality of the seed. And I think it's important for us to highlight that because before this practice of our cattle breeding was very applied because we had low quality seeds. We only had low quality seeds. We didn't had we didn't have a high cultural value seed with a capacity of germination that was good, so it justified that these plants needed to be there occupying the gaps. But now, with the quality of seed that we have, we don't need to have the pasture be with the seed sown before. And that is excellent for our cattle breeding because we start making this grass being with quality. And this is what's going to make our cattle breeding competitive. So when the breeder buys a seed, he needs to buy a seed from reputable companies, the ones that are registered, that have already gone through all of the capacity of germination and the benefits that are necessary for the quality. Because, as Professor Flavio said, if you buy a seed with low purity, you're taking to your property a plant that you didn't want, and many of the times this grass is more competitive than the one that you wanted. And then you keep with this problem for the rest of your life with the plant that you didn't desire. That is why it's so important for you to have the quality of the seed and the integration of your purity, integration and capacity, and the capacity that is going to be provided by the breeder, the producer. And not always the cheapest seed is, in fact, the cheapest, because what becomes a plant and what's going to become a grass is the pure and viable seed. So I need to know how many pure and viable seeds I'm going to have in a sack of seeds, and that's going to be provided by the cultural value. So the quality of the seed is that knowing how many viable and pure seeds are going to become pasture and grass to really feed our herd. Wow, how fantastic! You said it in such an
Nossa, que
objective
fantástico! Vou
way,
lhe dizer,
and you could
de
show
uma
all
maneira
of
tão
us.
simples e
And when I say us, I
objetiva,
say
conseguiu
us from all over
realmente
the
mostrar
world,
para todos
how
nós,
important
e
it
esse
is for
todos
us
nós
to
eu
look for
digo
this
nós
quality.
do
And
mundo
Professor
inteiro, o quanto é
Janaína
importante a
also
gente atentar por essa
gave you
qualidade. E olha, a
a
professora
word as
Janaína
well.
deu uma
I'm sure that
deixa
you
para
have many
vocês
comments to make
enorme,
after her
né?
speech,
Então eu vou
right?
passar a
About
bola
this
para vocês,
quality.
porque eu tenho certeza que vocês têm muitos comentários para fazer sobre
Definitely.
essa qualidade
Professor
toda, não é,
Janaína
Emerson?
Com
mentioned
certeza.
something
A
very
professora
interesting,
Janaína
which was
puxou um gancho aí
the
muito
issue
interessante, que é a
of
questão
the cattle
de
raiser still
deixar
has
ainda
the
o
tradition
pecuarista ainda tem
to
aquela
leave
cultura
the
de que tem que
seed,
deixar
and then there is the
sementear
pasture, and
o
then for
pasto para
after
depois
that to
colocar
put the
os animais
animals
para
to
começarem a
graze the
bater, né? Isso
pasture.
daí é um
And
mito
we have
que
to
deve
tear
ser
down this
quebrado,
myth
né?
to
Que assim, quanto
tear down
mais
this
tempo
myth
você deixa esse pasto lá,
because then it
pior a
worsens the
qualidade
quality of
nutricional
this
dessa forrageiro,
forage.
né? Então, assim,
And
cada cultivar tem
every
o
type
seu
of cultivar
momento
has a
ideal para você
specific
entrar com
quality,
os animais, para
and
poder retirar
it
os
depends a
animais.
lot on the
Depende muito de
interception of
interceptação de luz
food,
que está sobre
light,
essa
and
pastagem,
it's a topic
mas é
that
um
is very
tema bem
interesting that
interessante,
we
professor,
don't
que a
have
gente
to
não deve
put the
deixar
seed, and we just
sementear
have to
essa
respect the
pastagem
point of entry
sem
and out
respeitar a
according to
altura de
each
entrada e
area.
saída de acordo
And
com
I'm
cada
sure you have a
cultivar.
lot of experience in your
É,
side,
todos
right?
vocês também devem ter
Yes,
alguma
yes.
expertise muito legal
And
lá com
what's
relação
most
a esse tema,
interesting,
né?
according to what was mentioned to, and in a first point, it was that the physiological quality has to be made in the field where it's going to sow the seeds, and it's where they are going to be commercialized. So that's something that the producer needs to know, and it's important to get companies that are well known until so they will have this care in this with the seeds. And a second point that the professor has emphasized very much, but we have to insist very much on the cultural value to know how much you're giving that are viable, bring into the field. There is a technical concept that says that where seeds that are viable and pure, they are necessary for you to have a good pasture. Why is it necessary for you to seed your pasture so you can have a passage and with enough light, and after that it's going to the forage quality is going to be very low, and so these are topics that are very important in terms of quality of the seed, and where the companies are going to produce and where in these fields they are going to try to have quality seeds of quality until they have pastures and to get amazing results that we get to in our tropical country in Latin America as a whole. Yes,
Exactly. We always take these seeds with quality to the tropical world as a whole, right, Andre? I would like to hear a little bit from you and your experience when it comes to this worry
da experiência de
with the
vocês com
quality of the
referência
seed.
aí a essa preocupação com a qualidade dessas
Yes, the
sementes.
quality of the seeds is one of the most important factors that's going to interfere, as Professor Janaína has mentioned, in the issue that to have to close the soil to be established well enough in the soil. So the quality of the seed is one of the factors that the producer can worry about, and you can look for companies and seeds that have quality, unlike something such as plagues and that we cannot control. And the quality of the seed, as I said, we have the physical part that has to be something that you, and the purity as well, how pure it is in the seeds that are in the lot, and the physiological matter that was mentioned, the germination viability here in Brazil that we call now viability. And if we think about other countries that export and that buy the seeds from Brazilian companies. They are sold by germination, commercialized by germination. This is something important for when we talk about something physiological. And Professor Fabio was also very emphatic in the genetics. So there is no mix with other seeds. So if you buy a marandu in a specific lot, to have the exact the seed and to there is no other kind of seed. And another topic that is important when we talk about quality of seed is to trust when if there are no fungus and meloidogeno that cause problems, especially when we talk about the integration of agriculture and cattle raising in forests. And that's a factor that it does influence in the establishment of the pasture. And not only because if we think today, when we have an investment in pasture, the cost of the seed, I'm sure it's going to be one of the smallest ones that we have, the shortest ones. So if you get the ground and the soil that has to be prepared, the diesel, and the seed is usually the smaller cost, and the producer doesn't pay attention to the quality of the seed. We have to be very attentive and to acquire seeds of quality. And if we consider all of the investments, it's one of the lowest investments that we have. And there are many companies nowadays and that have all of the control that is necessary that bring quality seeds to the market to meet the demands of this producer. Because the worst investment is the investment that you have to make twice. So in difficult times, the ones that we're going through, in which investment in any sector, especially in terms of pasture, it's a high investment. The producer has to be effective and has to be specific, and the margin for error is very small. So, and look for whenever you look for a quality seed, all of the factors that were mentioned, they can minimize, and the probability, the problem and probability of success is a lot larger.
Andre, you said a word that I really
André,
like,
você falou uma
which
palavra que
is
eu gosto muito, que
efficiency.
é
I think that
eficiência,
we
né?
need
Eu
to
acho que
look for
temos que
this
buscar
efficiency
ser
in everything that we
eficientes em
do
tudo que fazemos
and
e
also in the
também
establishment of our
no
pasture.
estabelecimento das
Right,
nossas
Osório?
pastagens.
I'm
Não é,
sure that
Osório? Eu tenho
you
certeza
know
que
a
você
lot of all of
conhece
these
casos e
efficiency
casos de
cases and the use
eficiência no
of
uso
this
dessa qualidade
implementation of the
aí em
pasture,
plantações
right?
Hi, my
agropecuárias.
friend. In reality, Professor Flávio and Professor Janaína have talked very well about this topic. And it's true that Brazil and Latin America, in spite of the size of the cattle breeding conditions, they're very similar. Professor Janaína talked about a topic that we mention every day. It's the bad habit to hope that a seed in the first pasture and to wait for the growing of the first pasture. So that comes from an old tradition, and it's regrettable that until today you still hear this and you see this. And that's something that we're fighting against in our daily lives. And if we work with a good seed, using all of the criteria that were mentioned here, definitely they won't have any problem. And they will see that the cost of the seed is the lowest one, considering all of that hectare of the farm and the property. Professor Flavio mentioned something that is fundamental. If you work with genetics that is differentiated, you suffer more of this problem. More and more in Latin American markets, we see in some other places around the world, we see problems in concerning the purity. The purity is not so good as it is described in the presentation. Seeds that have varieties that are not, and weeds that don't even exist in that region. So that is a main concern that we have here. But the companies that are developing different seeds, they still have the problem of forgery and counterfeit. So we have this problem in many different countries, forgery of products that are sold in an exclusive manner, be it by a company individually or individually. That is something that the producer has to worry about, always looking for reliable sources, certified sources, and a seed that can generate a cost benefit that is expected.
Indeed, this is very worrying and it's something that we need to be super attentive to. But before we continue this conversation and continue hearing everything about the quality of the seeds, for us to have good pasture, I need to call for a break really quick so that you can get to know the members of our project Brazilian Cattle, okay?
Learn more about the work of the Matsuda Group. We have been in the market for more than 70 years, providing numerous technologies for food production, operating in more than 20 countries worldwide. We research and launch new pasture cultivars in addition to having the highest technology in tropical forage seeds in the world. We encourage respect for the environment, animals, and people. We are the Matsuda Group.
Get to know us better. At Gujará Juice, we work with selecting and genetic improvement of milk in Gujará. We believe that the Gujará breed is a fundamental tool for the improvement of livestock production in the tropics, in both intensive and double-purpose systems, by offering bulls and cows that are productive, fertile, rustic, and long-living.
No better agro-exports.
A country with generous agricultural production. The best of Brazil is transported to the world by agro-export. Agro-export ships by air and sea. Breeding animals, semen, equipment, live animals for fattening or slaughter. Contact us. Count on the guarantee of the agro-export brand in your next deal. Agro-export. Tradition and trust beyond borders.
Learn more about Romancini. Romancini is a company for the interior of the state of Paraná and was founded in the early 1970s by rancher Luis Romancini, who in his day-to-day life in the field noticed the need for the containment equipment that will be suitable for the various livestock cycles and all breeds of cattle. The passion for the livestock is what moved us and made us a company specialized in the development of cattle crush. Romancini, from the rancher to rancher.
Alta Brazil, market leader in bovine genetic improvement, is located in Uberaba, the zebu capital of the world, and from where at least one of every 3 doses of semen sold, produced or exported comes out. In 2021 alone, there were more than 8.6 million doses. This is how the agro grows and our credibility too.
Get to know Alvo Agro, a 100% Brazilian company exporting live animals, with strategic located quarantine farms loading from São Sebastião and Vila do Conde ports, offering to our clients more options from Brazil's market. Remember, if you're interested in taking to your country the quality of products that Brazil has to offer, think Alvo Agro, solutions that feed the world.
We are back now, and we're going to continue our conversation here. So important for you that is in a tropical country. Don't miss it. There are many details that are being mentioned here by our partners, by our professors that are part here of our program, bringing a lot of important information for you. Okay? So, for us to continue, I would like to know a little bit more if there is any difference between the quality of the seed of hybrids than from the conventional seeds. Edson, can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yes. First, for your answer, your question, the answer is yes. There is a difference between the seeds, not just morphologic in terms of the characteristics of the plant, but we compare to other the characteristics of the seeds as well. So the measurement and the commercialization of seeds is according to the viability. The viability and of the seeds in general is around 75, 80%, and it might be over this 80% of viability. But there are seeds that are hybrids that, and they can get to 70 to 80%, also with a situation that a number that might go higher. And remembering what Professor Flavio mentioned about the field and the physiological quality, this is going to match how the field was treated, what the treatment, so that the quality of the seed gets to the producer, and also the weather conditions, because we unfortunately depend on St. Peter. Sometimes he helps us, sometimes he doesn't, and that is an important factor. And the producer has to be mindful to this, and the term of compliance to if the patterns are there. And this is going to be the main difference that the hybrids are going to have compared to the conventional ones.
Emerson, I'm sure that you have a lot more to say as well, right?
Yes, I'd like to mention what Edson said about the quality of the seed, comparing the hybrid with the conventional seeds, and with not only about the quality of the seeds, but also in the practical part. Also, there are differences. Cattle raising in Brazil or in Latin America or anywhere else in the tropical world, more and more we have to intensify productivity, and hybrids are here for that exactly, because it's more and more complicated with these issues of deforestation, and we have to increase the productivity in the areas that the person or the producer already has. And so in order to get the best results, we have to change a traditional seed to a hybrid one. And in this way, we can have better productivity. For example, there are hybrids of brachiaria that produce 7 to 8 arrobas more in the same condition than Marandu. So it's a great alternative, and for the breeder to improve his productivity without having to work different lands. And And not only the physiological issue of the seed, but also the other issues, it's very superior to other seeds. So I believe that the future of cattle breeding, it's on top is depends on the hybrids. We are getting new genetic, especially Barimbrugge, the Wolfi, and Papaloto too also has seeds that are that were developed and definitely are going to change the productivity that the producer looks and the cattle breeder needs so much.
Exactly. And I think that we need to have a lot of criteria to be able to make this choice, right, Osorio? Because this is a sine qua non condition, right?
Sure. And the what was mentioned was very clearly mentioned. I believe that when we talk about hybrid seed, the commitment of a company like this, it's a lot more than to be born and to be the variety that is mentioned. So, if you offer a different quality of pasture that has some, they're going to produce more and larger production in the same area that are going to be able to resist certain climate situations. And what is the proposal of value is a lot more than the conventional variety. The quality of the seed is something that has to be very basic, especially uh, because it's going to grow and blossom. It's going to establish itself, so that this can be uh, real. The quality is a condition that is indispensable. So we have to adopt qualities of control that will allow good establishment so that the proposal of value is expressed in the handling, and this is basic, this is fundamental, and we do believe that all of the technology included in this will allow to get to as what we see today, and the growing of corn, and now we can see the number of seeds that is going to be necessary. And I think that we're going to get to this situation, and that's where we're looking for. And the factor of establishment is something that it's basic and it has to be established, implemented.
Great. And André, this criteria, I'm sure, that are part of your work there, right?
Yes, they explained very well in terms of hybrid and seeds that are in the market for a long time. And this is a main concern when we talk about hybrids and the quality of seeds. And regardless of, and I definitely agree that both topics, one seed that is in the market or a hybrid, that we have to follow up from the very beginning, from when you start planning to get the seed, and and even something that I wanted to mention is the issue of the lab, right? So that the genetic that has a very good quality, the physical and physiological quality, that phytosanitary, regardless whether it is a hybrid or not. I believe that the hybrid has this some challenges, but it must get to the producer the way that the company is selling it. That's the quality of the seed, and that's something that we were talking about, and it's very important today in Brazil, whether it is in Brazil or in other countries. It's of the utmost importance to have this work, regardless of being hybrid or not. As we mentioned, it has all of the tools to get to the producer with quality. And talking about another topic that Emerson mentioned, introduced in the conversation, today is easier not only for producers but also technicians that were in the field to have more variety. And many companies are working with the hybrid seeds, and the more seeds, the better, and the more assertive we can be in the choice and the indication. And there's a a wider range of choices for the producer to produce more in the in the same areas that we have, so we don't need to get other areas. And the hybrid seed came into this market, especially to try and cater for to look for better productivity. The quality of the seed is really, really important. And this
Ótimo.
verticalization
Bom,
of this
nós já
production is
entendemos que
also very
semente de
important.
qualidade é algo imprescindível, né? Mas eu tenho certeza que a doutora Janaína tem muito mais
Great.
itens importantes para
Okay,
poder
so
trazer
now we
para nós,
understand
afinal de
that
contas, de
seed
contas a
quality
expertise dela
is
é enorme, não é,
so
doutora?
important. And I think that Janaína has many more items to bring us after all. That is her expertise, right? It doesn't mean that we don't have forages that are not hybrid that have potential because what has sustained the Brazilian cattle raising were not the hybrid. That is just improving now. And just complementing, our pressure is a little bit higher. We need to produce more in the same area. No, I don't think that. I think that we need to produce more in smaller areas because the cattle raising has the condition to having more space for other things, reforestation and other cultures, for example. So all of this thing related to the quality of the seed becomes almost an obligation for the companies, and the serious companies have put quality seeds in the market. But what doesn't matter is that you choose a good quality seed but don't know how to manage your pasture, because that doesn't solve the solution. If you have a good quality seed with this good reputable companies putting it in the market and then the management of that pasture is done in the wrong way, you don't have consistency in the pasture, because sometimes the technology is burned because it doesn't have a good management. And that is one of the greatest worries that I have now. The plants have a new technology in the market, but okay, the forages that are available in the market, they have good technology, and it's a technology just like fertilization and electric fans or putting a chip in the to feed the animals, and it's a technology that needs to be known how to use. And so whenever we have a forage with a technology, we need to have a capacity building, a training for these breeders to use it, or else it's not going to be good. And there's this package that needs to be thought about in our country to bring to this breeder the new plant, but knowing how to manage it, because that's going to change our cattle raising. How knowing how to take care of our pasture and knowing how to manage it in the adequate manner. And completing what Flavio said, it's really important for us to have this great portfolio as forages that are available on the market, because we have a continental country dimension and we export seeds to many countries. There are people that are watching us from different countries. So it's really important for us to have this portfolio so that we can attend these different ecosystems, because only one type of cultivation, a culture, is not good for anyone. And it's important in the same farm to have different technologies, different ways to avoid plagues, to avoid diseases. So we have said in many of our lunches that is really important for our cattle raising, and this is something that increases the breeder capacity to make decisions. Some forages that are in the market occupy the same niche but in the same way, they have one or another differentiator. We have hybrids that are the Embrapa and the other companies that are here with us as well, and Embrapa is developing one too. We need to understand that we are entering in the hybrid market. We work with this Viger hybrid from each one of the plants that are going to be used for this type of use, but it's the management of this plants that effectively is going to make our cattle
Professor
raising
Flávio, e eu
to
tenho
go to another
certeza
level.
que
And I have
você
noticed that our
tem
breeder is
informação para
starting
poder
to notice that as
complementar a
being
professora
necessary
Janaína.
to give this step. And the quality seed is the first step. Professor Flavio, I am sure that you have some information to complement Professor Janaína, right?
Yes, the first item that stood out in my opinion is the diversification. It's a very important factor in the property because some properties have specific activities, and the same species might not adapt to different properties, such as I'm talking about fertility, areas with a drainage problem. We have to direct the species that adapt best to this condition, that is very productive. And I also agree with him when he talks about the growing corn. And I see, and that's my own experience, when we talk about corn in Brazil, if the hybrid hadn't evolved, we would still be producing what was produced 100, 150 sacks or for a hectare by hectare. And with the current technology of the hybrids and the investment in improvement, performance, adaptation, and the hybrid vigor that is very important, we're talking about today 250 per hectare. So that is very significant uh, by and I see the hybrids in with this expectation, and I think that the responsibility is common for people who commercializes the hybrids, and the quality of the seed has to be according to the law, and each company has to follow the quality patterns that are established to keep their image of the company. And I see the hybrid with wonderful eyes, meaning I believe they have a lot of potential. But as I also work in types in the improvement area, I think that there are many factors that we have to work with. So this is something for people to think about because we focus too much on the production of dry material and quality and nutritional quality. They are important factors without a doubt. But when we see the size of our biome, which in Brazil, as Professor said, we have to try and identify what the problems are that we have in these seeds, in the current seeds, for us to improve the performance or to try to have solutions with the hybrids. Meaning the distribution of the blossoming, we have species that produce 80% in summer and 20% in winter. So what is the distribution? Persistence and range. Quality is also an important factor because if you have a hybrid that doesn't have a higher quality, it doesn't make much sense. And adaptation to the climate conditions, that is nutritional, that has a lot of acceptability by different breeds and types of animals, be it horses or other species, and that is sickness resistant. These are factors that, like in Tanzania, that it's a very interesting species that's very highly productive, but it's very sensitive to sicknesses. Tolerance to salinity, especially the regions of northeast, where they have a serious problem not only of drought, but also the high content of salt in the water. So there are many things, and also resistance to drought as well. We're trying to do this, and for soy and corn. So I think that for the opening of the hybrid might solve even probable problems that we might have using technology of hybridization, adding resistance to drought, and or well, there are thousands of applications. So it's really welcome. And I think that we're just starting now. And I think that in the near future, we're going to have more specific material, such as the corn and the soy, that adapt to specific regions and they might have a better productivity and performance and quality. And everyone gains with that. So that's my point of view of this technology and the responsibilities that are common. And I hope they're welcome and they maybe for us to understand better in relation to this. Up to 2006, according to the Brazilian Association of Improvement of Genetics, 83% of the people were these academics were in the universities and in the research institutes. With these companies, we have been focusing on improving genetic improvement that is very significant, that it might probably be important to mention that we are the largest exporter of tropical grasslands and grasses in the world. So besides being something important, it's a responsibility. So I have the responsibility to have a company that will export better with best qualities in their seeds. And I will end here by saying that responsibility is very important for us to keep this topic, and so that Brazilian products will go to other countries the due pattern of quality.
Fantastic, Professor Flavio. That's it. It's a challenge one after another, especially when we are in this position of the greatest exporter, greatest producer, with the responsibility and of the quality, producing and offering quality. Our conversation is going to a path that is more and more interesting. But before we continue, I'm going to call for a break for us to know a little bit more about our members from Brazilian Cattle Project.
Hi everyone, my name is Emerson Ferrari Neto. I'm going to talk about Sabiá and Caiana. Those are two new cultivars launched in 2021. They are tropical hybrid grasses designed for livestock production. They were developed in Badenbroek Breeding Program, the largest private breeding program for tropical grasses in the world. For more information about these two cultivars, access our website badenbroek.com.br. Thanks and see you.
Know better. Coima, a 100% Brazilian company with 70 years of life, who is contributing with the cattle breeding advances in general. Coima offers you, cattle farmer, 5 models of cattle crushes, 2 models of electronic scales, and also road scales. Our objective is to contribute the cattle breeding advances in order to produce more meat, needing it worldwide. Coima is located in Dracena, São Paulo, Brazil, but we provide services to each Latin America country. Visit our website, coima.com.br.
Estancia K presents a modern project of dairy cattle breeding that gathers genetic improvement of dairy gear cattle, high productivity cows that are multiplied with high standard, along with bulls and collecting centrals. Estancia K is focused on the commercialization of embryo packages, cow pregnancy, male and female cattle in commercial events all year round. Estancia K, continuous improvement.
No Better Agro Exports.
A country with generous agricultural production. The best of Brazil is transported to the world by Agro Export. Agro Export ships by air and sea. Breeding animals, semen, equipment, live animals for fattening or slaughter. Contact us. Count on the guarantee of the Agro Export brand in your next deal. Agro Export, tradition and trust beyond borders. Recognized in the national market and abroad, Genial provides important innovations to the livestock productive chain. We are a link of reference with international trade. Genial is certified to export to many countries and provides services in cattle cloning, genetic data banks, in vitro fertilization, beta-casein, and DNA testing for over a decade. We are a complete laboratory. We are Genial.
For more than 55 years, we have been working towards a more efficient pasture-based livestock in the Nalorestan. A herd with females improved by a straightforward selection for fertility, maternal ability, and precocity. We are always looking for bulls that maintain and improve these traits in our herd, producing animals with good temperament, rustic, functional, and productive.
Once again, we're back. We're going to continue now our conversation here. And I am sure that it's really important for you from the other countries, not only our breeders here in Brazil, because many relevant points have been mentioned here, and you can be attentive in the establishment of a new pasture with the criteria and characteristics that are really important and should be taken into account. But as we have already had the comment from Professor Janaína, it's not only important for the seeds to be of quality when we establish this new pasture. Of course, that without this quality, we are not going to be successful. But besides this quality, we need to have quality and criteria in the management of this pasture. And now I'm going to pass the floor to my friends here. Emerson, you're going to be the first one for you to bring more tips for you guys at home about this.
Cool. This topic of handling of pasture is a very large one. We could be here for hours and talking about the handling of pasture. But I would like to comment on something that Dr. Janaina mentioned, that it's no use the good quality of seed and a hybrid that produces more if the producer doesn't or the farmer doesn't know how to use or handle this pasture. So, even more important is at the beginning, it's the establishment. So if you get a seed that is conventional and you have the hybrid, and there is a difference between the establishment of the hybrid, and the hybrid have a specific characteristic that after germination, they stop growing the aerial part, and the cattle breeders get scared and says, "What's going on? It's not growing." But that is a physiological characteristic of the hybrids that is completely normal. So the cattle breeder has to know that after germination, this plant will have the longer roots. So that is a differential for the traditional seeds. So it's going to have deeper seeds. And when it is at a point that it can absorb a lot of nutrients, it'll keep on growing the aerial part. So it's important in the meantime for the property owner, to worry about a weed, because since the aerial part stopped growing, some weed might come, because there will be the interception of light, and there might be a seed bank that will enable the growth of weeds. So I just want to make clear that it is normal, this delay in the growth in the aerial part, because they're growing their roots deeper, and he has to be careful about plagues. And if he thinks that there is a plague that is growing, it's important to have a chemical control so that it doesn't compete with the hybrid material.
It's an important tip, especially to show this characteristic that the hybrids have, right, Edson? Tell us a little bit about your
Yes,
important tips.
and I just want to continue what was mentioned by him, the control of weeds. This is it's a challenge for the producer because the same way we had the myth that the plant has to grow to continue spreading throughout the area, we had a second myth that is still believed now, and we have to bust this myth, which is with the hybrid, this is going to be different because it's physiological. So when the weeds come, it is necessary to control them, but it's always important to get a guidance by a technician to perform a better control, so you don't lose the pasture that you're planning, because the cost of an implementation of a pasture is very high, and we always have to plan, and we do have to make the math to see if we're doing this. And the second tip that I can give you, and would like you, the audience, to recommend the page of Professor Janaína that talks much about the pastures and handling of pasture, is management also is the size of each seed. Why? Because the plant doesn't correspond to days. It's going to correspond to that microclimate, and it's going to answer to light, water, and temperature. So when it starts answering this to this situation, it grows up to a point. Let's there is a hybrid or a phone, and it can be handled up to grows up to 40 to 50 centimeters, and it shouldn't grow further, because when it starts growing further, it's going to project shadows to the top to the bottom of the page, and it's going to get more dead material, and it's going to worsen the conditions for it. So we always emphasize, and in the page of the professor, you're going to have not only the avon, but also other seeds and how to do the proper handling.
André, tips about management of pasture. I'm sure that you
It's
have
an
many.
important tool, right? As Professor Jonaina mentioned very well. And there's no use for the producer to invest in a high quality of seed and to choose a hybrid or a plant that is produces 20, 30 tons by hectare, and this producer cannot reap or harvest. And it'll take 3, 4 years, and there will be degraded pasture again. So what we see is this producer to know this, and also to transform, as what Professor Janaina mentioned, to transform the forage or the into other things. And the management, as Professor Flavius said in the previous part, he mentioned there is a distribution of forage that different between the dry and the wet season. Of course, that it depends on each place and the characteristics that of the place, but in general, the forage seeds are the ones that are concentrate more in the wet season, in the rainy season. So if we have the 28 days in the rainy season, it's completely different from 20, 30 days in the dry one. So if the producer works with the same methodology in days, and I'm going to take these turns, 20 days in dry and 20 days in the rainy one, depending on this, you're going to make a mistake in the management of the pasture. You're going to have a degraded pasture. So the tools for the producer to be able to avoid this problem, to be able to use the best way the forage and to not have a degraded pasture, is to think about the management of on height. And regardless whether it is in the dry or the rainy season, the height will be the same. So that is an opportunity of management that the producer has. Many producers have this The idea to produce the most and do not have this problem. And as it was mentioned by the weed, there are two different problems in the establishment of the pasture when the producer toils with the soil and it changes, and there is a seed bank, and there is the weed that comes, and the other one, the different technique when you manage, and there is and other that reduces this forage. So they give the opportunity that the weed has to develop. And there is a competition in that area. So these are two different moments that the producer has to worry about. This control is necessary, and something else that Professor Janaína and Professor Flávio also are going to comment about is that production is that not only production but the nutritional value. So if the producer has to find the balance between the production and the nutritional value, because if we get a forage that is regardless of what type it is with a very low height, it's going to have a nutritional value that is probably higher but with lower production. And the same way, if we get a forage that is already sowed and that is a little bit taller, it's going to produce a lot, but maybe the nutritional quality is not so good. So in the management by height, we're going to find the balance between production and nutritional value. That's why our colleagues and the professors, using the management by height to find this balance to transform this pasture into milk or meat.
Professor Flavio, what about your tips?
It's an important topic because we have the premise of the quality of the seeds. And if we have a good quality of the seeds of high performance, we have a problem which is the establishment of pasture. So we have as a criteria that to determine its function after forming the pasture. And with 20 or 30 plants in a square meter, we have the sustainability that of the pasture and the function of the seed. In theory, was achieved the mission. So, but however, we know that the seed is a primary factor, and as technicians, as professionals, we have the right we have the duty to guide that it's not only this, because as it happens here in Brazil, to have degraded pastures in terms of nutritional factors, and because of lack of management of pasture. As it was mentioned before, in terms of the management, the main factor that I see now, they are mentioned, the weeds, a slower development, but the management of pastures starts in the first pasture. The first pasture that is going to provide the correct and or the pasture grazing, and using the criteria of height. And it has a specific, the species has a specific height with a productive potential is connected to quality. And you see where there is a height, and this moment the plant presents a high quality of nutrition and many other good characteristics. So the first pasture grazing actually is not nothing more than the initial management with animals. They're going to remove going to bite the bits of the grasses, and the plant is going to suffer stress. So you cut down the height of the plant by reducing the tips, and there is a stress because the grasses, most of them, in terms of production of energy through photosynthesis, it loses the basis of productivity of what is the plant going to do? They stop the growth and they encourages the production of new leaves. And you can see that a place where there are 200,000 stands, plants in by hectare. If each one provides 6 new plants or leaves, we can talk about over 12 or 1.2 million new leaves. And starting from then, we can identify, and we adopt the criteria of management with adult animal, be it for beef or for milk. This is a pattern, and that it has to be used regardless of the species. One of the factors that stands out is not only the height. No, as it was said, the plant starts its development. We don't see very often the manure of the pasture. It's a slow answer because it develops all its roots, and after that to produce leaves enough and to continue with the its development. And after this development, one of the deadlines that happen is when you go to the grassland or in the pasture in different points, you look and you try to remove the plant. And if the plant is fixated in the soil and only your grasses, the leaves are removing it, it's a time to get the animals to eat them. And if you try and pull it and you pull it from with the roots, it's not well established yet. So this is very important. The handling and management is very important to have a better performance of these grasses and the production, as it were, and as our colleague mentioned here, to change all of the pasture, we won't have to change it. So, to try and preserve the longevity and to adopt the criteria of management according to the investment and the region, according to the segment in which you're working with. And I see that the seeds are a primary factor of all the procedure, but a factor that is going to provide sustainability and the formation and the future management with the goal of productivity, regardless of the way. And it's the management. And the management using the criteria of height is the best one. That's the collaboration that I wanted to give.
Great. I think that I have called everyone. I think that there's just Osório before Professor Janaína. Okay, so Osório, your tips.
Okay, Osório. Well, Professor Flávio mentioned things that complete the importance of the management and the formation and in the use of this for forage. My collaboration, so I don't have to repeat what was said before, is to say that it doesn't exist. There is no magic forage that is going to be used for any climate, for any soil, or for any environment. So everything starts in choosing the correct forage according to the correct soil and the correct climate. So if we do that with the correct seed, with that is guaranteed, with a good management, as it was mentioned by Professor Flavio and other colleagues, and choosing well this variety of the seed and the pasture, be it hybrid or the other varieties, that is basic to get successful. And to know that the diversity is fundamental, and that was mentioned over and over by Professor Janaína, and we have this diversity that is so good. And there are hybrids that can develop as well as their roots and its aerial part, and to occupy its space, and to be ready in a shorter time than other varieties that are conventional. So there is diversity, there is quality, and I believe that what Brazilian cattle brings to Brazil and to the world are companies that are committed to quality, technology, and they know if you know how to choose well these materials that are going to be used in your property, I'm sure you're going to be able to have cattle breeding that is sustainable with better production and to show that it is possible to produce milk and meat in a sustainable manner and in good balance with the environment. That's what we work for, and that's why technology is so much more advanced now, and developing techniques and varieties and hybrids and materials and managements that allow to produce more, not only in the same space, but actually in a shorter space of the property. Choosing well, knowing how to use the correct material in the right soil, will be able to produce much better.
Very good, Osório. Excellent. How many wonderful tips. And extremely important. And for us to finish, of course, Professor Janaína, the expert, to bring her the last tip. Thank you so much. My colleagues have already spoken really well about this management, but it's important to compliment Professor Flávio. We have already questioned ourselves. What is the management of pasture? What is the definition of this? By its definition, it is to manage a very antagonic procedure because it fights with the area where you need to maintain the plant, but you need to raise the cattle. It's catastrophic when you manage the area. It's bad for the plant, but it's good for the cow. But afterwards, it was able to deal well and survive this stressing procedure. So to manage the pasture is to be able to manage this area with the plants and to have quality of food to the cattle. It's a fact that the plant doesn't respond to the human, but to the temperature, nutrients, and water. So the management of plant is going to go through all of these procedures. So I was saying to Flavio, if you have 20 days of rest of a pasture, when you have the transition between the water and drought, you cannot have enough time for it to do reserve. And if we insist to be putting the cattle there, it's not going to be good. We will start degrading the process and we have to change the plant afterwards. Even if we choose the adequate plant and if we do everything right, when a pasture is well managed, it starts with a well formed pasture. It's very important for you to do that beforehand, for you to manage it later. It's important for us to manage, but it's important for us to form it well, to suit a right seed, and to do a control of pests and all of the different procedures that Flavio has mentioned for you to start managing afterwards. And pasture, what we need to think is that the concept is a little bit different from, for example, grains. When we cultivate grains, we want to harvest the maximum, and we know exactly where we missed in the harvest. In pasture, I don't want the maximum production of my forages, and sometimes it's difficult for us to understand. I don't want to maximize my production of forages, being it hybrid or a conventional seed, because if I maximize, in other words, if I put my forage to produce its maximum, I will have more stocks and I will have more plants under the ones that grew too much, producing shading and dying because of it. When I increase the height of this pasture, this tendency of prolongation of stalks makes the plant below it look for light and the other one also, and it does this movement. So this prolongation becomes a priority for this plant, and those are not plants that my cattle will choose to eat. So I don't want the maximum. When I get a forage producing its maximum, a brachiary hybrid that reaches 70 centimeters, for example, of height, it can even be apparently very beautiful. But when we evaluate outside, it's very good, but inside it's not. Because when we open it, there's a lot of dead material in stock and not a lot of leaves. So I don't want to maximize. I want to optimize because when I optimize my pasture, I am able to marry production with quality. This maximizes the production of the animal because when I maximize the production of the grass, I do not give the most to its cattle. On the contrary, when I optimize my grass, when it comes to quality and production, then I optimize the cattle. This is the objective of the manage. You maximize this criteria and this criteria of height of the plants, we are able to find this balance. So this height balance allows us to support our pasture because the stocking rate doesn't tell me much because how many animals do I have per hectare? This is part of the management, this type of question. If someone tells me that there are 5 animals per hectare and this is forcing the pasture, this stocking rate is wrong. On the other hand, if someone has 2 animals per hectare and doesn't force the pasture, this person is with the right management. So the stocking rate on itself doesn't tell me much. I have to see the amount of grass that I have to offer to this animal. So that is how I understand my pasture. So when I have a pasture that is maintained by height, this means that I have a lot of animal and I'm not respecting it. And if it's too high, then I cannot put more animals because then I will have the right support. So I need to manage this antagonic process without having a lot of grass and not a lot of animal for you to have a balance. So choose the right grass. That's why it's good for us to have this great portfolio to support this continental country that we have and to be able to export and manage the pasture. That is the way for us to have a sustainable social, economic, and environmental sustainability for our pasture. Wow, I'm extremely surprised and happy. What a class did we have today, right? You have provided so many important information for us, and I'm sure that you that is here with me on the other side is really happy to receive so many information that are going to be really relevant for your process of implementation of pasture in your lands. But before I say goodbye to my colleagues, I would like to start a break for us to show you the members of our project Brazilian Cattle.
Baguaçu Agribusiness has performed an excellent job in the genetic improvement of the Red Cindy breed in Brazil. After 10 years of investments in differentiated genetics of the country's most traditional ranches, we now have a herd of high genetic value, multiplied by donors like Babalu and Fortuna, besides bulls of national prominence like our award-winning Canary Fiv Baguaçu. Baguaçu Agribusiness is the best of the national Red Cindy genetics in the midst of the exuberance of nature.
Hi, learn more about CRV. With more than 104 years in the world and more than 50 years in Brazil. Being a pioneer in genetic improvements in the country, we are the largest provider in Latin America, and we have a full portfolio with improving results. Therefore, CRV is guarantee of evolution for the herd. CRV, better cows, better life.
Learn more about Imprenha, a 100% Brazilian company dedicated to the manufacture of veterinary products, which seeks to develop innovative products, continually investing in new research in order to bring solutions to the market and maximize results in animal reproduction biotechnologies. You can count on our products because to us, your result is the most important.
Learn more about the quality JLT Tabapuã Farm Água Marinha by businessman Julio Lauri. Animals of excellent genetics with the most desired characteristics: maternal ability, winning weight, weight to sovereign, fertility, structure, precocity, muscularity, and carcass characteristics. JLT Tabapuã, love for the breed.
So this was another a show made in Brazil that provided to you many technical information that I'm sure are going to aid you so much in the productivity in your property with sustainability and efficiency and that are economically feasible. So I would like to thank our friends here, Professor Janaína, Professor Flávio. Thank you so much for your participation. You really shined in our show. Professor Osório, André, Matsuda, Barenbrugge, Edson. They were here with us, sharing their knowledge and expertise to all of you, taking in all parts of Brazil and the world tips and experiences and knowledge about pasture, because that is so important for the development of our tropical cattle raising. Thank you so much for participating in Made in Brazil show once again and in Expo Cebu 2022. After all, if this year you couldn't be here in person, we can go to you and help you in your house, bringing a lot of important information, our care and our hug. We'll see you tomorrow in the other program of Made in Brazil. Thank you so much. See you later. See you later. See you later.